Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode, a hybrid episode of both Boss Talk and From the Command Post. We're coming to you live from the Public Service Training Academy studios here down in the Command Post area. Today we're going to be talking about the New Hampshire Avenue church fire that occurred in Battalion 4 back on August 9th. So quick reminders before we start. For the command officers that are watching today, if you would like to get COPDI credit, make sure that you complete the form that's available on the Training Academy website. No need to put in your ID number in the chat. For those stations that are watching as a group, if you would like to get credit, good idea to do an activity in Fire App. So we like this to be interactive, so for the chat, please ask questions. If you have any questions for the officers or the incident commander, we will pass that on through the chat. Lastly, before I turn it over, our next episode is going to be next Wednesday. We're going to be talking about the second alarm fire in Clarksburg. And there's some other ones in the hopper, some EMS stuff coming up, but that's the next one. It'll be next Wednesday. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Capt. McCullough, and he'll do the introductions.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. I'm getting my voice back from last Thursday, so if I cut out here, don't mind me. So joining us for this episode, we have Chief Masters, Battalion 4 on A shift, Lieutenant Palmer, Battalion 4 float, currently parked at Company 4 on A shift, Lieutenant Moore, Company 15 A shift, and Captain Kitner, also Company 15 A shift. So before we start, again, everybody, this is a 90-minute episode. We're scheduled for 90. We won't go over that. We might go a little under that. The more questions you guys have, the better. I have gotten some informal feedback recently. I guess we've been kind of talking as we go around to see what people like, what people don't, about mostly the boss talks and challenges in the streets. So I've heard it a couple of times, not in a negative light, but a lot of this stuff is repetitive, right? So not that we're not going to discuss the incident itself. We'll still talk about layouts and stuff people said on the radio and everything, but I also want to focus on things we could take away from this and maybe make ourselves better. So maybe have everybody kind of touch on that. And I kind of thought of a question like we always ask, hey, if you had to run this incident again, what would you do different? I don't really like that question personally, just because we never run the same incident more than one time, right? So I always started to ask it like, hey, if you had to run a similar incident, like, is there anything different you would consider? Today, I think just some stuff to think about in the back of your head for when we start like a roundtable after we talk about this call. And I know Captain Kitner's got some points he's picked up that were similar on this incident to other incidents he's run. I think a couple other people did. But just kind of forcing everybody to do a self-assessment, right? Not only thinking about like yourself, but I guess at the end, I'm going to kind of ask and hopefully to steer the direction of the conversation to say like, did this go exactly how you would have liked? Like when you, like if you drew this up in your head before it happened, and then just some things to think about, like what could you do as an individual, as a company, and as what could we do better potentially as a department to have the incident maybe go how you would have drawn it up ideally in your head, right? So just some stuff that we'll toss around after. So I don't think I'll take up any more time. We'll start off with Lieutenant Palmer since he was working at Company 4 for this fire. I guess just talk about, time of day, how your day went up until that point, I guess, when it got dispatched, what you got dispatched as, and just general stuff going down the road basically until they upgraded it.
So it was around 1:30 in the morning. It was the night, I think, of the tropical storms going on. So we've ran probably 2 other fire alarms around 11 o'clock that night.
Sure.
Same thing, big buildings. There was a school down the street. Same thing, multiple alarms going off, get there. Just some sort of, electrical short or something. But, same thing going down the road. It was us and 40's Tower since we're running out of 4. They told us en route they were getting multiple alarms, and then they also, later on en route, they said they're getting burglary alarms and motion sensor alarms. So kind of
think anything was out of the normal, though, based on the other calls?
No, it was like
the weather?
Yeah, this is going to be something with the weather going on here,
right.
Probably. So kind of knew where it was. Looked briefly in the map, saw there's a hydrant right out front in case we needed it. Got there and pretty much just non-emergency get there, and it was completely pitch black. None of the lights in the parking lots were on. Couldn't really see. You could see the building, but nothing going on. No smoke showing or anything like that.
Okay, so this was a local alarm, non-emergency service call for a fire alarm until after you guys got there.
Yeah, we discovered it to be a fire.
All right. So when you guys pulled up, how did that process start? When did you decide that you were going to upgrade it?
We pulled in, The second entrance going south on New Hampshire Avenue.
Can you guys pull up the box map, please? I think you have it, or the street map there. Thanks.
Yeah, right where the hydrant is. It's right in front of the parking lot. So we turned in that entrance. Came in, like I said, all the lights were out. You couldn't really see anything going on inside. It was all glass windows around the one side, but they looked tinted. Well, I guess we'll talk about that later. But since we're getting all those alarms and burglary alarms, I told the driver of the engine we're going to circle around the backside of the parking lot just to see what's going on the backside of the building. It's a big building. So
you guys, that shot right there, I guess you
Yep.
pulled up, just up that driveway and kind of around to almost where that pin is, the Google Maps pin there.
circled around there, and the tower stopped in front of the building, got out, and I told him I'm going to go spin around. When we got around, a message was around talk around like, hey, I think there might be something going on here. So we spun around, and then at that time, we parked right behind the tower, or in front of the tower rather, on what we deemed ended up being the Alpha side that I called the Charlie side originally, but got out and saw that there was something going on inside when you walked up closer to the door, and you could start to feel the heat coming off the front door, and that's when we called for the box alarm.
Okay, so where did you guys ultimately end up positioning? I know you said you came in that driveway there, you went around the back.
So if you come in the second entrance, if you're going south on New Hampshire Avenue,
Okay, it comes
see
out
that
twice
sidewalk
there.
that V's right there in the parking lot? Right there? Yep.
Okay, yep.
Tower and the engine were pretty much right there.
Gotcha, so that's where you ended up.
Yeah.
And we were calling that the Charlie side, I guess?
Yeah, because the other side had like an awning with like Knox box on it. Later we found out, because when we got
Okay.
out, we didn't have a Knox box on that side.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. So that's when you call for the box.
yeah.
All right. I guess we'll go to Chief Master, just since this is the point where you get dispatched, right? When they go to fill the box, and then we'll talk about as the later companies arrive and then first arriving things for you. So when you got dispatched, what information did you have, and what were some things you were thinking?
Well, I mean, I guess the first thing that went through my head, if somebody's filling out the box alarm, then pretty likely we have a working fire. So, coming down the road, I didn't know it was a church initially until after it was broadcasted and I, saw the comments on the MDC. So coming down the road, I'm just listening to the reports. There was a description of, a church full of smoke with heat conditions. I was just kind of listening how things were playing out. I knew there was going to be a delay in other companies getting there. We had some units on the scene. The rest of the box alarm obviously responding. So I just wanted to, at that point, just wait until we got at least one more company on the scene before, we engage.
Was anything out of the normal, or I guess that would cause you concern, right? Obviously, you're running from 25, so you got a little bit of time to get there. I'm trying to think of another example. If you were running Glenmont Circle or whatever that time of day in the same scenario, is there anything different that was going through your mind on this based on the scenario or the things that the type of building, time of day, general geographic area, anything additional that caused you concern or of any sort, or not really?
I would say overall probably not. I tend to stay pretty quiet while I'm responding and let these guys do their job, sort of paint the picture for everybody. The one thing that I was curious about was the whole water supply. Half of Ford's area is obviously a rural setting. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really get the information initially until I had some time to scroll through the MDC, whether this was going to be a water supply issue,
Just
rural
making
water
sure
supply.
that dispatch was correct. And,
right.
yeah.
So,
okay.
other than that, no, I think that, I like to just let things play out. And,
Okay.
the only thing I said on the radio was just asking the first two engines just to hold up until another unit got on the scene.
Okay.
Hey, Matty, can we back up a little bit? What kind of conversation were you having with the tower officer out front, and who was that?
It was Lieutenant Richardson, and it was basically, hey, I'm not sure, come swing back around. I think I got smoke. I can't tell. So we came back around. We got out. I got eyes on it, and then we decided we're going to call for the box. So it was maybe like a 20-second delay of spinning around, getting eyes on it, making sure this is what it is, because it was very hard to see. You had to actually get up close to the glass doors and shine your light in. You could kind of vaguely feel a little bit of heat, but it wasn't anything significant at that point.
What did you tell your crew, this being like we don't run these large open space fires, so go through the thought process of you and the conversation that you have with your crew and the other officer. I think that's important to cover.
Obviously, it's a large structure, so, we're thinking long line right away, so it's we're pulling a long line. We're not going to go in and get lost. It's, cut up. There's a cathedral side and then a almost school-like side. So kind of regroup, wait till everything is situated and set up, and then we're going to make a decision on what way we're going to go in. Obviously, there's multiple entrances to this building. You don't want to go in too far one way versus, making the wrong decision in the building. So
Visibility?
you could see when you went into through the window, we opened the door, you could see the whole, I guess, lobby area. There was smoke, but you could see. You obviously knew something was burning or was burning prior to us getting there. It was odd because you open up into the lobby, didn't have much heat. Smoke was not that much. You could see it was banked down a little bit, but all the walls were melted. Chairs and cushions were melted. It was like something burned here yesterday, and they forgot to ventilate the smoke almost. It was that type of feeling. And then once all the other units got there, kind of 24's engine and 15's rescue squad came in the same way, and we decided we're popped the door to the cathedral, the one right there, and that's when we felt like, okay, this is where it's going to be. This is where the heat's coming from. It's going to be in this room here. And then we did a quick check on the opposite side of the lobby where it leads into the school, and we opened that up and there's no smoke or anything. So we knew kind of pretty quickly when people got there where this origin of fire was going to be at.
So the smoke lifted pretty quick in that entry area when you guys forced the door as you were making your way. The doors to the
wasn't pushing
worship
out. There
area
was no
were
pressure
closed.
behind it. It wasn't. It just was kind of lingering in that lobby area.
Okay. So I guess it's a good time to go to you guys going down the road. So in terms of arrival, so engine 715 was third due, and then squad 15 and Captain Kitner was the squad in the box. So I'm sure you guys got there. At what point did you notice other companies were pulling up right around the time you guys were at that?
I mean, 24 got
area?
there pretty quick. I mean, it's basically 24's area.
Yeah.
They got there pretty quick. I mean, once I called for the box, switched over and gave a report, you could hear the sirens coming up New Hampshire Avenue.
Gotcha.
So.
All right, so you guys were probably there shortly thereafter. Michael, any notes from when you guys arrived? Like, where did you guys decide to position and why?
So we positioned to the opposite side of the building, just because that's where Chad called it. When I gave the report from what ended up being renamed the Charlie side, I called it the Alpha side just because I'm on the opposite side of where he was. When we arrived, we had like a double drop bar door, so we carry like a small K-12 Milwaukee K-12 saw on 15's wagon, and I was like, okay, this thing's going to pay for itself. And when I got up to the door was already open. And I didn't communicate that on the report, and I should have communicated that on the report, but it just didn't like dawn on you at 3 o'clock in the morning because you were to go to a single family and one of the back doors is open, the back door's just open. And just didn't, because I guess, and I missed some of this initial stuff about like burglar alarms and stuff like that, but it was odd, and that should have been communicated on my half. We let off with a 300 in a rack, and then the truck positioned with me. So essentially, we just all kind of met there. I had a conversation with Master Firefighter Chris Higgins, who was riding to see the truck 15. It's like, look, we'll go in here. There was like 3 or 4 doors off it. I said, we'll just kind of move, make sure it's not in here. And we didn't really have any smoke with any sort of velocity. I mean, it was dark brown and it smelled good, but it was only maybe to about chest level, no heat. When I walked in the lobby, I gave a return from the lobby that I had no panel, but I had like what I refer to like almost like a home ADT type,
like an annunciator.
Annunciator, just the little white boxes, and it gave no informative information.
Did that put you in the same like entry area that he was in, or that they had gone in from the other side? Or
No, we were probably 200 feet away or so.
like more toward the New Hampshire side, I guess, or the.
Well, he was on the south portion of the building. We were on the north portion of the building.
Okay.
Yep. So like the Delta side faced New Hampshire Avenue,
Right.
and then the other side. So like this view here, is that what you see? That was the Delta side of the building.
Right. Okay.
So I just talked with Chris. I was like, look, let's make sure that it's not somewhere in one of these rooms. Like we got to a room with a mail slot. I opened up the mail slot. Nothing came out. So it was pretty obvious there. And at that point, Chad gave the return that he had. They had made it into what they believed was the place of worship. They had good smoke conditions and some heat, and he believed it was above us. So we slowed down a little bit, and we were like popping every third ceiling tile. Just like we would move 15 to 20 feet, pop a ceiling tile just to make sure it didn't get behind us.
And nothing. What you guys did?
Nothing.
was
Clean,
remarkable.
clean conduit. No heat on the imagers, like nothing. So we finally get to like that open lobby area where everyone else came in on the Alpha side, and we noticed the same thing. Like there was a hand sanitizer that was pretty much drooped down to the floor. The walls were all like, the painted blistered up as if it just like had been spray painted and melted. The cushions were melted. But like the weird thing was, is we popped some more ceiling tiles, thinking like, okay, this has got to be roughly where it is, and you took like 3 or 4 ceiling tiles, and it was just clean conduit. That's when I met the captain outside the place of worship, and he's like, it's got to be in here. And like I made a couple steps in there, and it wasn't unbearable. Like we didn't feel as if something bad was going to happen, but there was the distinguishing difference between the lobby and that room. Like you knew you were in the right room.
Right.
You just didn't know where.
Was there already a line in there when you guys got
There was. So there was
they were
two.
already-
There was 2 points to go in. There was a point like right when you came in. We
Right.
came in the opposite side with the rescue squad. So around that time, Captain Goodbroad gave a return, and he had fired through the roof. And of course, I knew he was on the other side, but I told the lineman, I said, "Look, stay here." And of course, the 4th was with him. I said, "Just don't leave the captain here. Don't move from this area." I just ran out the door real quick and looked up, and that's when I met Master Firefighter Stair, my wagon driver, who was working overtime at 24. And he goes, "It's not on this side; it's on the other side." And then when we came back to the door, or I came back to the door, the 3rd on the rescue squad said we found it. And we went in maybe 15, 20 feet or so. We let off a search rope, and we just had a small little bit of orange at first, like the lineman. And that was like the lineman's first like decent fire. Like they couldn't even see it where it was.
All right, we'll pause right there to talk about I think a good training point and talking point for the companies, right? We talk about handline selection, right? Obviously, large building, square footage wise, I know what would you estimate the building was
Well, I know what it was. It ended up being 32,000, just over 32,000 square feet.
in total?
Total.
So the worship area is probably what, 10,000, 13,000?
The worship area, the pastor there told me it holds between 700 and 800 people.
Okay.
So fit about 50-foot ceiling space in the middle peak in that room.
And I want to steal the thunder because I
Pretty
know
large.
you want to talk about that later, about the size of the structure and stuff like that. So all those things considered, I mean, did you guys, how much, honest thinking were you doing about your handline selection? Was it like a combination of things like potential fire load and just pure dimensions of the building? Or, what line did you guys stretch from for?
300 foot off the. That's we just
300
carried.
foot, 2 inch.
Yeah, and then the driver brought a rack to the door just in case we needed it.
Mike, you guys 2 inch or inch and a half?
1.5 inches.
Okay. And what, just curious.
We just had very like lazy brown smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't like when we got there. There was really nothing evident from the roof. It wasn't like the
And you said it was a 300 in a rack?
300 in a rack.
So what made you choose that over like a 400 in a rack? Or
Just because I didn't I could see on an aerial view, like it was just difficult to see how far we were going to go. So I didn't want to get stuck with going like too much. But then I knew I had a rack as an option, so like I drugged the rack with
Yeah.
me. So if we did for some reason fall short, we had an option.
That's kind of what I was thinking. So a larger building like that, right? You run a non-standpipe building or whatever, that's just a large footprint. It's one of those things like, yeah, I can go in this door right here and I can encounter something, especially in a scenario like this, I can encounter something 20 feet inside the door and have to eat up 400 feet of hose, or I might have to go, 375
Right.
feet into the building and find the fire. So that's a good in-between, a good talking point, right? It might be better on some of these buildings to stretch a 250 and bring a rack, or 300 in a rack as opposed to a longer line or something like that right off the bat. So something good to think about in larger, on standpipe buildings, just a big footprint. All right. So basically we've got to the point, I think we're about at the entrance of the worship area. We know where the fire is at this point. At least we think we know where the fire is. Cap, you guys got there on the squad about that time, I guess, where the engine had reached that point. They were already inside. Lieutenant Moore kind of alluded to it already, but how'd you guys decide in your plan of action where you were going?
Yeah, so to start, as you talked about, to start the day, the day was a abnormal day. We started with a 2-alarm fire on Lockwood Drive first thing in the morning, where we worked. We had 2 terrace-level garden apartments and then an upper floor. And we've been busy with driver's training, so we have 3 different folks between the engine and the truck company. So the days have been long some days. So I think probably most everybody was pretty tired.
Did you go to the same fire, the same group of people
Yeah.
in the morning and at night?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing changed. Let me change that. The squad driver changed for me. I had Master Firefighter Higgins driving me in the morning, and then for the church fire, I had Firefighter Chris Miller driving.
Okay.
So I had gone to bed maybe at like 11, and I wasn't soundly sleeping. I actually heard Lieutenant Palmer make the transmission to call for the box that he had heat and smoke at the front door. But in Forest area, there's places where do and not do, so I didn't know where it was. And by the time I ran out and saw it on the board, they were dispatching the call. So I was up probably before everybody else. We got out pretty quick, got up there. I was familiar with the church. I had just worked overtime, I think a week and a half or 2 weeks prior, Company 24, and we had ran a call up that way, and we actually turned around in that church parking lot. So I knew where the church was, but I wasn't familiar with I had never been inside the building. So we pulled up, we parked out of the way, we parked on the Alpha side, down the parking lot from Tower 40 out of the way. Got out, I heard his return, right, and I know Chad, so I was like, well, it's probably on fire, like I just don't know where. We're not gonna know where. So, a couple things for me, like I grabbed a box light. Typically I don't grab one of those. I'm already weighed down enough, but for this call, I decided I should probably grab one. Heads up to the squad driver. He grabbed a search rope bag. I didn't tell him to grab it. He grabbed it on his own. So it was really good thinking on his part. We got up there to the door, met Chad at the door. They had just come out and they were getting ready to go back in. And I saw where the line had gone, and he said they went in and they went in to the left, and they didn't see it right away. They didn't find it. It was really weird looking and kind of eerie. I mean, it's eerie already enough that you're running a fire in a church. But when you're standing at the front door and you're looking, there was burned up stuff all over the carpet. And what you could see on the walls was melted. And I think from them going in initially and then coming back, when they opened the first set of sanctuary doors, it allowed all that smoke to come back out in the lobby. So when we made it to the lobby, we couldn't see much more than maybe 5 or 6 feet inside the door. And it wasn't white smoke, it wasn't black, but it was brown. And so you knew it was burning at the components of the building in some fashion, but we just didn't know where. So talked with him real quick. He said they went in and gone to the left, and at this point they were transitioning, going back. They went back in, they went to the left, took their handline in, and I could hear them flowing water in there. They already had a special service crew with them, so I decided to take the 3 of us, and we went past them and found another double set of doors that led to the sanctuary. So you couldn't see anything. Using the thermal imaging camera in the lobby worked well. Was able to see the doors of the sanctuary. I felt the handles open the doors. And as soon as I opened the right-hand side of the double door, we had pretty significant heat come out with a lot of brown smoke. And it dropped the visibility from what you could see down to pretty much nothing unless you were laying on the floor. And that was eerie in itself, too, because when I opened that and I got down and I turned that box light on and I'm laying on the floor looking, like it looked like the organ pipes were laying on the floor that we were going to have to crawl over. And then there was like everything was burned. I had never seen anything like it. Like everything was burned on the floor. These guys will tell you there was embers and soot everywhere. And I was like, what? Like what happened in here? And like where is it? So we talked, the 3 of us talked amongst ourselves. We came up with a game plan. Chris Miller tied the search rope off to a fixed object in the lobby, and we proceeded to go in. We could hear Company 4 flowing water to the left side of us towards the New Hampshire Avenue side. We could hear the water swing over towards us, but we weren't getting any droplets back down. It's like, well, I don't know if this joint's still on fire or what's going on, or maybe we were too far away. But we couldn't hear them talking, but we could hear the water hitting the ceiling. So we moved forward off the search rope. We kind of split off the search rope, and we kept in contact talking. We're lucky at Burtonsville, the 3rd riding position in the back of the rescue squad has a thermal imaging camera. I know that's not standard in the county, it should be. And it did help in some cases. Mine went to whiteout conditions pretty much right inside the door, but I think Stevens did work some. So the sanctuary doors that we came in, you had pews to the left and pews straight ahead, but I had a partition wall to the right of me, and I was following that wall. And at one point I stood up to see what the conditions would be if I stood up, and it was much hotter, but I was able to reach my right hand over a partition wall. And when I reached it over, my hand instantly got hot. And I had my wristlets on and all that, so I was like, this is interesting. So to make a long story short, the further that we went, we were able to locate the fire in the ceiling level, and we were able to locate the point of origin as things settled down. It was in that back corner, looked like
on the other side of that partition wall?
Yeah,
basically?
directly on the other side of the partition wall, which would explain why we probably had a little more heat on that side,
Right.
and why we were getting the whiteout conditions on the camera. I would say we probably deployed 20 to 25 feet of the search rope. At one point, I went back to get my bearings and look around to make sure we didn't miss anything. And as I was going back to search rope, 15's wagon was coming in. That's when I met Lieutenant Moore. I'm like, hey, it's in here somewhere in this corner. I just don't know where. That's when he went back out to look and left me the lineman and the 3rd from the rescue squad and the driver, and we were able to find it up in the roof area.
Okay. I want to come back to the search rope. I think that's a huge point. That's something that everybody carries some kind of rope, but we have no standard for that, right? I'm sure different companies have different stuff, so I'm just curious exactly what you guys have and a little bit more on how you use it. So We'll go back to Chief Masters, and obviously for everybody out there, I'm also moderating the chief officer portion of it, so I'm going to focus more, I think, on the interaction between the company officers and you as a chief, and then obviously whatever chiefly advice you want to present to the other chiefs watching would be appreciated. But so at this point, what returns were you getting at the point you arrived? And then I guess we could show a picture, or I think we might have some camera footage or whatever, at least what it looked like when you pulled up. But
Yeah, so I got there right with 24. I feel like I got there, fairly quick. I took a position on the side that 40 and 4 were on, and so at that point I kind of decided to rename the sides. I figured if they're entering from this side and I'm going to take command on this side, then I'm just going to call this side Alpha and so on. So that may have been a little confusing for some companies. Lieutenant Moore gave a report from side Charlie or side Alpha rather, and then turns out I switched it on him to side Charlie. So that was the first thing that happened. The communication coming back to the command post was pretty good. So good that it started creating a little bit of notes, if you will, mental notes, right? So a couple things that I'm picking up on pretty quickly is we have no idea where the fire is.
so these are some of the red flags there that for command officers.
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
talk
This would be red flag items. Don't know where the fire is. I didn't know initially if this was a one-story building, if it had a basement, if it had an attic. What I do know is a lot of churches, in my experience, have a lot of additions. They expand on them all the time, and obviously that has the potential to create more void spaces than normal. So I wanted to try to sort that out pretty quickly. So I picked up on that. I picked up on some transmissions that suggested the heat was increasing, the smoke conditions were increasing. Somebody used the term zero visibility at some point and high heat. So I immediately picked up on that. And then the transmission of, I think it may be above us. So all this is going on. What I did was I, assigned 2 engines in a truck to enter from both side Alpha and side Charlie, and I called them as such, Division 1 Alpha and Division 1 Charlie. It's the best thing I could come up with at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the thought was, hey, we got a big building. I'm going to give 2 engines in a truck from both sides, kind of like, hey, whoever finds it first, hopefully they communicate that back and we'll go from there. Once we had a rep show up pretty early who confirmed no basement and no attic. I had 40 do a circle check at the same time that was going on to see if there was any kind of indication of a basement. And so all this is going on. I know I got companies inside. They're trying to find this fire, and next thing I see is fire come out of the roof on the Charlie side. So that raised some concern for me. I got a lot of people in this building. The conditions are changing, not for the better at that time, for the worse. And we have no idea where this fire is, and now it's coming out of the roof. Still didn't know if there was an attic. Definitely didn't want to create another, Western Avenue situation.
Right.
So when that happened, I repositioned the command post to the Charlie side to get a better visual on this. Tower 24's officer also gave me a report regarding fire, coming through the roof. I think there's a video of it if you want to show it. So it wasn't a tremendous amount of fire, but it kind of ties into the smoke conditions that are being described, a void space fire or a structure, on fire as opposed to the content. And so at that point, there was a very quick conversation between me and the other command officer, which was Chief Blake. And I'm like, man, I think it's probably a good idea we just pull out of here for a second. Let's see what happens, get some order on that, and just, reevaluate the situation. As soon as I said, if we're evacuating, there was some conversion, which is obviously when they, found what they believed to be the seat of the fire. A lot of that fire, not all of it, but a lot of that fire went away. You could definitely see some conversion from smoke to steam. So that was reassuring, but at the same time, it was like, still went with the evacuation. And at that point, the quickest thing was to send 40. They were getting ready to go in the Charlie side to back up 15. So they had a line outside. truck 15 had already laddered the building. I had that officer, give me a roof assessment, and they stretched their line to the roof. So what I ended up doing at that point was the Division 1 Charlie group became the roof division. They stretched up on the roof. Lieutenant Moore gave an excellent, well-detailed roof report. And so, when you do that, when you give good reports, it gives reassurance to the command officers. Safety 700 was also on the roof. Nobody was describing anything that led us to believe that there was instability issues. So at that point, this operation, turned into a lengthy roof work. So that's kind of where we were at that point.
Cool. I was just gonna make a note, but I'm gonna stop now. We'll talk about roof stuff more later because I want to talk more about roof stuff. Yeah, I won't talk any more about it now. All right, so you guys, I guess from a company perspective, right? I think we pretty much talked about most of it, right? Afterward, I mean, you guys, we could talk a little bit about the roof operation, I guess, right? That's kind of so at this point, you guys found it, you flowed some water on it, right? Is there anything other than that? And then how was like the withdrawal when you guys got evacuated? I mean, did it go smooth? Do you think anything like, hey, what's going on here? Like, am I seeing something different than he's seeing? Did you understand why he pulled you guys out, or was there any like back and forth, or is this immediate? Yeah, we get it. Like, not that you're gonna argue, right? You're gonna leave, but
I mean, we had a very minor discussion. Like, should we tell him that we think we found it? And it was just like, no, we'll just leave. At no point did we feel in danger. It was just there was a lot of smoke in there. There was, you could tell the room was on fire, and we found orange, and it went away.
And when you're in it, you're comfortable, right? Not that you're comfortable, but like you know what you know what you see, right? He might be seeing something different. He might be super uncomfortable, but you're in there. So I've been in that position. You've been evacuated from somewhere before, and you're like, what the hell's going on? You're just not happy about it, or you go, but it's like, then you come out and you're like, oh, all right, I get it, right? You're seeing something different. So like from just listening to this not being there, I would think in his shoes, I'd be like, man, I'm not really too comfortable with this, right? Based on these trigger phrases and fire through the roof then and everything else, and then, get pulled. From your perspective, it seems like everything's going pretty well inside. So I was curious about that. So you guys got backed out. You ended up going to the roof. Did you guys see anything else inside before you got backed out that was noteworthy?
Not necessarily. I just want to touch on, like, Lieutenant Moore and I talked inside. We talked when he first came in. I probably maybe should have painted a better picture for the boss with this, but like he told me that he's like, hey, we came in this way. We heard the transmissions. He's like, we popped ceiling tile all the way down. Everything's burned and melted in the lobby, but there's nothing in the ceiling, right? So that should have been an indicator to me that when we found it in there, that's probably where it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't state that clearly to him. Maybe that might have changed his perspective.
How high was the ceiling in the worship area? Like, how
50
typical,
feet.
typical vaulted, yeah.
Yeah, but actually the area where the fire was probably only 25 or 30 feet.
Okay.
So, we had good conversation leading up to that point about what they had done coming in the other way that I didn't see. And then once we found it, we put water on it, and then we actually had another conversation standing there. Couldn't really see each other, but he's like, should we tell him? And I was like, well, we'll just go. Like, at that point, he probably saw something different than what we saw, and I wasn't going to try to change an evacuation.
Yeah, so I'm not advocating that you argue. I know I've been in that position, being a realist. Like, I've been.
Yeah, it's like it's just easier to go, and then do what you're supposed to do, and then we'll come back and we'll finish it up.
All right.
Being across, I was just want to say, being on the other side, I don't know any of this is going on.
Do you hear them over there at least, or
not really? Because I'm at one point I was like, flow water, like it's got to be in here, like flow it up. Like I don't, it's hot and we can't find it.
Were you getting water back down on your side?
You could hear it flowing, but he was arcing it up, so I couldn't tell. And it was loud, but it was almost like a head scratcher between me and the other officers in my group because we're like, we went up and down the aisleway on the other side of the auditorium. It's huge, and it's like it's hot, but I can't find it. And the same thing, white out on the thermal imager. That's when I said I think it's got to be above us or somewhere up high that we can't reach or something, hidden somewhere in this, not out in the open. It's not like one of the pews or something's on fire. So
I guess, and again, you guys were there. So is there any? I do want to talk about the roof stuff, right? And the operations in the roof and roof structure and everything. Is there anything really? Was it pretty much overhaul at that point? Because it seems like all in all, this fire pretty much burned it. I mean, not that it burned itself out; it was still burning, but like a lot of the damage had been done, kind of thing. And it was essentially like an overhaul operation probably at that point, right after you guys knocked down what you did from the inside, then had to go to the roof. It was pretty much just opening it up and overhauling it, right? Is that pretty good synopsis of it?
I would say so, yeah.
Um,
From a
so-
sanctuary standpoint, there wasn't much to overhaul in there. I mean, everything was in, the building construction itself. It was up high. There wasn't anything we could do from inside.
And from a rescue squad perspective, I guess, was there ever like a complete, would you consider a complete primary search done? What do you think
No.
what's the realistic, I guess, assessment of how well you could do a complete primary search in that building under those conditions?
Nearly impossible, I would say, with 3 people. In the sanctuary itself, 15,000 square feet, and then I don't know that we have pictures of it, but afterwards, and we're walking through and we're finishing what would be a primary and a secondary, and we're trying to get through there. There were multiple classrooms in the other wing, multiple classrooms behind the sanctuary area, multiple offices behind the sanctuary area, and all that stuff. You couldn't see anything. And then there were also viewing areas that led into the sanctuary area that had Lexan glass that was tinted out for people with like kids or elderly folks that couldn't make it in there, with two-way or with one-way communication, so they could listen to the sermon on the TV screens. They were all filled top to bottom with smoke. So the place was really cut up.
Yeah, I mean, we always focus on the fire. I feel like a lot of these, obviously, we know our incident priorities are in. Everybody's here for the same reason, right? So life safety is number one. Is there ever any thought about? I know high rises. I've heard it a couple times. Assign like a rescue group or having more units come back in. Like, were you ever confident that like everybody was out of this building? And like, at what point did we finally say like, hey, like, was it more of just like a good secondary afterwards? And I mean, obviously we do what we can, but with finite resources and the conditions that bad and the building that big.
Sure, and I mean, you can always argue the what ifs, but no cars in the parking lot, right? I got a building rep there saying that the building's not occupied. Nobody was there when Force showed up to meet them at the door per se and say, hey,
Right.
This is what's going on. So I think it's important to still rule everything out, right? But there was some information there that didn't put it high on the priority initially, right? So at some point, yes, we did assign companies to check thoroughly throughout the rest of the building, just to sort of check that box, so to speak. Touching on what Capt Kitner said about the evacuation, it's one of those things. I've been on both sides of this, right? I've been the one inside where you're getting pulled out and you're like, damn it, And then sitting on this side of it, it's a very tough decision. I found it to be a very tough decision to make, right? It's a balance of you want to let these guys do their job and work. You're hearing things on the radio, you're seeing conditions, and then as soon as you get to the point where, okay, that's enough, right? And you make a decision. In this case, as soon as I said it, literally 30 seconds later, there was conversion. You're like, oh, man, they probably got it. But the fact of the matter is, what happens if you're wrong?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to take that chance, right? I didn't want to
had
take the chance of being wrong at that point in time. Let's just back out, regroup, make sure that what they found and what's coming out of that roof is isolated to that, and then we're good. We can go back in and open it up and finish this thing. But in that moment, there was just too much for me personally. There's too many indicators that just gave me a little bit of an uneasy feeling at that time. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a conversation with Chief Hudson about that, right? The Flower and Piney Branch fire. They had basically not same scenario, right? Very different scenario in terms of the building construction type and fire and all that kind of stuff, but similar scenario in terms of, hey, we think we have something more going on, high risk at this point of us being in there. Ended up being they pretty much had it, right? But it was one of those, hey, do you make the call? Do you not make the call? And building a rapport between the chiefs and company officers, right? Like, hey, I trust you and I trust you, kind of thing. You got to do your job to to a certain point, right? I can only do my job so well, and you're the eyes on the outside, and if that's what you see.
And again, I'm not saying that we should operate or live in fear, but there's a lot of, and I tried to include this in my after action. There's a lot of stuff out there. For example, Western Avenue, those guys had no conditions. It resulted in a mayday.
Yeah.
Howard County, 9,000 square foot house. They described lazy smoke in the basement, killed a firefighter. You go read some after-action reports on large structures, which is not something that we do very often. You'll see some common themes, right? Didn't look so bad when they showed up. Took a while to find the fire. People were overcommitted, running out of air, not enough hose, or what have you. And they all end up leading to bad situations. So, I think the red flag stuff is important to understand that and to pick up on those cues. And then it's just up to the incident commander. At some point, you got to make a decision of how far you're going to allow this to go, before you regroup and change your strategy.
Yeah, I was talking to Chief Capt about it. We talked about a little bit before. He has a presentation that just a Italian-based training thing that he's been doing about building construction and size up and stuff like that. And a point we discussed was a lot of those after-action reports and line of duty death reports, and they talk about, every fire occurs in a box, right? So the amount of smoke showing or the conditions you have in the larger box, obviously, have the same conditions in an 800 square foot Cape Cod in Kensington. If I have that amount of smoke in it, is it that big of a problem? Not really. I mean, you could have void space and everything, but that amount of smoke in a 13,000 square foot open worship area, when it's that hot in your thermal imager, right? The visibility is that bad. Like, you got something, major going on, right? Something bad's happening. So just taking that into context, I guess, is important.
Absolutely.
And then we also talked a little bit about, I'm not trying to hijack the whole conversation, but, what we asked before we were having another sidebar conversation was, what is ego-based decision-making? I don't know if it's the right term for it, but as an incident commander, right, would you, not that it's ego-based, but would you consider that an internal fight almost? Like, I wouldn't want to admit it, but I know it's true, right? Like, is that an internal struggle? Like, I don't want these guys to think I don't trust them or less of me or something like that by pulling them out. I mean, is that like something that, I think.
Look, man, I'll be straight up. I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't.
Right. I think it's the truth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not pointing you out. It's the truth for me and anybody, I think, that's been in any position to have to make a decision. Like, you might struggle with some external factors that aren't the right, it's not the right way to make a decision, but it's something that as humans we have to overcome. So I think it's important to realize.
We again, just speaking honestly, we had that conversation in the hot wash, where I said, hey, look, sorry, but I saw you guys got water on the fire when I'd already made this decision. So,
and you overcame that, right? But there's been times where people haven't, not just in our department. And again, you look at all everywhere, right? It can happen. Everybody's human. So.
Circling back real quick to your comment about smoke filling up a volume of space. The other thing, and this is just my opinion, when you talk about these larger buildings, and even maybe in a single-family house, a lot of people like to use the term lazy smoke, and I think we all have an idea what that probably means. But in terms of a 32,000 square foot building, lazy smoke in the lobby, right, it just means that the sanctuary doors were closed. You have a barrier. Once you open those doors up, it was no longer lazy smoke. So I'm not sure that, when you get into these big structures, the same theory or what we believe to be lazy smoke really applies, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. In fact, I would argue that maybe it tells a bigger story that, hey, man, something significant's going on in here. We filled up 32,000 square feet.
It's a lot of volume
of smoke, and it's moving out of the structure. So, yeah, it's not like a bedroom off in a Gaithersburg townhouse, but, it's of significance.
Yeah, absolutely. What'd you have, Ken?
No, I was going to say, I talked with Chief Masters at the hot wash, and then I think the next day we texted back and forth, but I completely, not that my opinion matters, but I completely agreed with his decision, to pull the plug. You don't know. We thought we found it, but we weren't 100% sure, and what if we were wrong? So, and at the end of the day, as company officers, we probably all agree, like, when the boss says it's time to go, it's time to go. There's no argument, and I'm not going to key up the radio and try to change your mind on something. Like, if it's time to go, it's time to go, and we'll figure it out later. It's not a big.
Yeah, it's not about. I don't think it's about agreeing or disagreeing. It's just about that an inherent bias that we have, or that there's. I don't know. I don't know what even to call it. It's not ego. It's not. I don't know. Would you guys agree? Like, I just think if I was on his side of it,
oh, absolutely,
right? I would be like, man, I don't want to pull these guys out of here. I trust Scott Kitner and Mike Moore and Palmer. Like, I know they know what they're doing. I don't know. Yeah,
it's a tough call.
I think I would struggle with it. Again, not that we agree or disagree with it. I think it's something everybody's got to be self-aware to be able to overcome it. All right.
I got one question.
Good.
From the chat. Paramedic Engine 704 officer going down the road, at any point did you smell an odor of smoke?
We talked about it. We did not, but the tower said when they were kind of pulling in the parking lot, the one I think the driver said they mentioned it smelled like class A, like a bonfire class A. Didn't smell anything like a structure per se. And again, it was middle of the night. Could have been a bonfire in that area, but nothing significant. I didn't smell anything. Not until I got out of the engine and got probably 50 feet from the door, you could kind of have a hint of the smell. But no.
Anything else right now? No? All right. We'll talk about the roof operations, I guess, and I think that'll pretty much conclude the fire, unless the actual fire. And I know we have some subtopics that we want to talk about on it, unless anybody else has anything about the operations. From the roof, was there anything, what did you guys find up there when you got the Handline up there? How much fire was still left on the roof, and what did they do to overhaul
So there
it?
really wasn't much fire left on the roof. Lieutenant Joe Sharbaugh was in the front seat of 40's wagon. He had already stretched up truck 15. He had already taken his crew up there, and he had already started making a cut by the time we got up there. So we came out, we swapped bottles. He assigned me the roof. And we was like, we knew we were probably going to face some sort of flat roof with a double membrane.
What was the roof structure? What did it end up being?
It was a rubber membrane with like 3 layers of styrofoam, 2 or 3 layers of styrofoam
Underneath, and then
yeah, we went.
What was
through-
the actual decking?
I was never even there to make it to the deck.
Okay.
I think when they finally made it, I think it was 18. It was a plank and beam on one of the portions.
The decking was the underside of the ceiling.
So it was
of the
like
sanctuary.
tongue and groove, or?
So I think it was like
2 by
5
6,
inch,
yeah.
by an inch tongue and groove.
Okay.
Almost like a nutty pine type thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So like we got up there and Joe had already made probably part of a 9 of a 798 cut, and I don't know if it was it might have been the guy riding bar on truck 15. He went to go hit it with a hook, and it didn't move, and it was like, okay, this is gonna be miserable. So it was like we kind of divided and conquered. It's like, look, if you're not doing anything, just go stand over there because you're gonna get called in at some point. We called for razor knives. We tried to get as much as we could up of the membrane, and then we sunk a couple chainsaws into it. We got the depth, but then of course the chains went, and then from there was pretty much we would just send a K-12 down right to the arbor, pull it back up with a square, and we would just pry up the styrofoam.
What kind of blade are you using? Like a Warhog, or?
Yeah, carbide tip. And we just kept doing that all along until we could get through all the layers of styrofoam because we weren't
Peel that back and then work.
Because we figured out that we were not going to be able to bring it up in a whole section, right? We were not going to be able to make a 4x4 with an inspection hole and pull it like you do. This was going to be, as you can see, this was not.
Peeling away layers of an onion.
Yep,
right?
pretty much.
So,
There's a picture of what the conditions looked like when they started the roof op. It's that. So that is from the command post after they had some water on the fire and we're coming out. This is what we were looking at, minus the fire. So that's kind of what it looked like when they were starting their roof op.
So basically, you walked onto a flat roof that went to the peaked roof that was over top of the sanctuary.
So pretty
It was
much,
kinda
if you
between
can
where those two roofs
imagine,
met.
they did not put a roof in the echo quadrant of the building. They put that peak up there. So imagine building a flat roof and leaving the center of it, not completing it, and then putting that ginormous peak.
And that was just to
pretty
have
much-
like the vault
Yep,
effect inside.
That's all it
that.
was.
Okay.
So where the fire burned up through was pretty much where the peak roof meets the flat roof. That's all it was.
What was the supporting structure of the roof? Was it like heavy timber? Was it truss?
Yeah, it was big. It was in big like masses, whatever the things were called.
Like laminated heavy
yeah.
timber.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, like the faux heavy timber. I don't even know.
That's the underside,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
which is just like I said, it's just tongue and groove.
Yeah, so in terms of anything that you could have done, I mean, obviously, we don't cut roofs a whole lot, right? And most of the time we do it, it's for overhaul. They cut a commercial roof again, that Piney Branch and Flower. They kind of encountered some different types of, I think that one was a rubber membrane over styrofoam over metal deck, over bar joist, right? So very different. I think this is one area as a department, one of the things, these acquired structure trainings that we're doing, right? I mean, get people on roofs, right? How many people have had to deal with that, right? Unless you go to a fire like this where you understand how the rubber membranes going up blades, how to, get the styrofoam sheeting off. They have the huge nails with the heads holding that stuff down, and then having to cut tongue and groove and how to pull tongue and groove. I mean, it's completely different than a piece of OSB out of the roof prop, right? So if you get to do that in the building, that's huge. Is there anything you guys think could have been done differently, or we could do better, as a company or whatever, that you're going to go forward and do different in terms of what we do and how we go about it? Did you encounter any issues, or everything went okay I know on that other fire, I talked to a couple people. They're like, "Oh, it's X, Y, and Z's first time cutting a roof," and luckily there was other people that, and it happens all the time. Or every fire, somebody's first fire driving the engine, somebody's first fire riding the line. And we got to build them up, right? As an officer or as a senior person, right? You got to help them through that, and everybody's it's first time for everything, right? So, did everything go okay, or?
I mean, it went fine. I mean, it was just a lot of work. I mean, pulling all that styrofoam up, and you got companies that have already gone through a bottle. They've already operated for a duration of an incident. Now they're going up to essentially operate again. Like the captain said, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You've already been to a fire that day. It's the 12th, the 15th run. You went to bed at 11, 12 o'clock. Now you're back up at 1:30, and you're working yourself pretty hard. Just probably a little bit more manpower. And that's not. I mean, I don't even know if sometimes like more companies would do you right, because then you get into the too many chiefs, not enough Indians. If we could just have like those 4 to 5 person.
It's like forcing a door. Everybody behind you knows how to do it better.
Right. But it's like a 4 to 5 person truck company. Like if you had 2, because like the truck driver was completely out of it. I mean, he worked his butt off but he was just constantly. We would go through a saw. It's like, all right, go get another chain. He'd come back up. It's like, hey, this razor knife's blade's broken. Go try to find us something else. It's that he just went up and down for 45 minutes to an hour. So just probably like a few more helping hands would have been, like I said. But then we had done it that way where you call up more companies and you get 9 opinions floating around, and then work's not really getting done. But everybody that was up there worked really, really hard and did a very good job.
Yeah, the acquired structure training is good. It's just hard to find commercial buildings that you can go cut like this. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I brought with me to Company 15 since I left one, but we've cut more commercial roof buildings in the 4 years that I've been there than I have, I think. I don't know, and probably in 15 years, we've probably done 10 or 12 of them. And I was on Flower Avenue the other night, and luckily I had Tyler Wallace with me who's doing truck training, so it was perfect for him. He got to see the metal decking with styrofoam with rubber membrane, but not everybody gets to see that. We could show as many pictures as we want here, but until you get to experience that with saws, you go through a blade, you got to switch out, you got to get another chain, and it's labor intensive. It takes people, but if we could find commercial buildings before they're torn down and rotate companies through that have ladder trucks, it would be invaluable.
Yeah, I agree. Doing it one time, it's invaluable, and everyone you encounter, right? Even from commercial roof to commercial roof, it's different, right? I mean, they're all constructed a little bit differently. They're all covered a little bit differently. Then you get one with stone for drainage on top of it. It's a whole nother saga. So cool. All right. There was one other thing I was going to ask before I'd ask you to kind of go on your little sidebar about the size up and windows and stuff. I can't remember what it is. You have something?
No, I can wait till the end.
I got a quick
What do you got?
question. You guys might have already addressed it, but from the chat, how long did it take you to vent the structure once crews were confident that the fire was knocked? And then a comment after that, clearly we don't have the airboats anymore for large space PPV fans. So 2 parts, anybody can take it.
I would say that it was easily over an hour to, get the smoke moved out of that place. I don't know the exact time. 3 special services worked with all their fans set up strategically in a vent group, and it took quite a while,
And it's not super well advertised.
Now, the good thing is, in terms of the sanctuary, Tower 40 had also cut a hole up high in the peaked part of that roof. At some point, there was some question as to whether it horizontally extended to the other side of the building. Still didn't know if there was any kind of attic space. So Chief Ryman, who was running kind of that Charlie side roof division area, had requested Tower 40 to cut a hole. So I think that helped get some smoke out of the sanctuary as well.
I said I don't think it's very well advertised. Doesn't 53 have a mobile ventilation unit, a big fan trailer?
I don't know.
Yes, I mean, yes. So we do have that capability in county, even though we don't have airboats. So, okay. Anything else in the chat or anything right now? Okay. You want to talk about? So Captain Kitner brought up. He's got a point about size up and about window staining and stuff that he experienced in a couple other incidents that was similar to this one.
Yeah, so, like I said, I was awake. I heard Chad, Lieutenant Palmer, request to fill out the box alarm. His conditions were heat at the front door with smoke, but I didn't know, the severity until we got there. As we pulled in the parking lot, I could see the smoke coming out the front door, and we were probably parked like 50, 60 feet away. Looked like brown smoke coming out. It was pitch black, like there was no lights on the building, so you really couldn't see a whole lot of the building to get a good size up as a rescue squad officer walking up. Other than I knew I was there a week or two before, and it was extremely large. And there was a chapel area and then what looked to be offices or classrooms. So we parked on the New Hampshire Avenue side of the parking lot, the Alpha Delta side. And as I got out, as I said before, I grabbed that box light based on what the building looked like. I mean, it wasn't a townhouse or a garden apartment. It was a large commercial building, so I grabbed the box light, and rescue squad driver grabbed the rope bag, and I told him I'd meet him up there. So I veered off the sidewalk going to the front door of the building, and I actually walked up to the chapel side of the church, the Alpha Delta side, and I used my flashlight, the box light, to look in the windows. I touched the windows, and they were warm to the touch, and I could see what appeared to be like smoke stained or moisture, like water running down the inside of a window. So that led me to believe that that's probably the area that we were going to need to concentrate in when I got up there. And then I told those guys that as we were walking up, and then my suspicions were correct when I ran into Lieutenant Palmer, and he told me where they were operating and where they were. So they were exactly where they needed to be. Just the area was so large, they were on one side and ended up being on the other side. So, and the reason I did that is, and I don't do it on every call, but I've gotten burned twice by this, right? So if you're riding the front seat and you miss something or you don't make mistakes, you're not human, right? We all make mistakes and you're going to miss stuff, especially with the amount of stuff that we need to say and do. So I've tried to learn from that. So I ran 2 fires when I worked at Station 1, and one went out as a box alarm, the other one went out as a fire alarm, and both of them I missed windows being smoke stained that would have led me to know that there was a fire there. So that's the first one there that you're looking at. That is that went out as a fire alarm, but it went out as a fire alarm on Fenton Street, and that building sits at the corner of Silver Spring Avenue and Fenton Street. So if you come out of Station 1, make a left and make a quick right on Silver Spring. It's down there at the next intersection of the corner. The building's kind of unique because it carries separate addresses, and I didn't realize that of all the time I worked there. I knew that stuff was there, but I didn't know it had separate addresses. So I'm running a fire alarm on a Fenton Street address. I get there, it's an Ethiopian market, cafe, whatever, and the fire alarm's going off, and there's nobody knows anything. Everything, it's operating. And it was like 1 in the morning, because a lot of those places turn into nightclubs at nighttime. So nobody knew anything. So we found our way to the second floor that's offices and a little bit of lazy smoke up there, but nothing crazy. Started looking through mail slots. Don't see anything. Forced open a couple doors. Couldn't find anything. I walked around the entire outside of the building, couldn't find it, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. So I mean, it's embarrassing to admit this, but we had spent like an hour looking for this because I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't find it. And I was like, I give up. Like, I don't know. So we're back there packing everything up, and we're standing there, and Brian Vane was driving me on the engine because I think it was one of the fires that I went to when I was working for Captain Blankhorn that he didn't get to go to at the time. And I looked at Brian, and I said, were those windows always tinted in that market? He was like, I don't think so. And then I realized, like, when you're working at Company 1 and you're coming back from 2's area, that's the way you come back to the firehouse. And they always...
Medic locals?
Yeah, on all the medic locals in 2's area. And they didn't have a medic then. So cars were always parked illegally there. So I'd always blow the air horn, and I'd yell out the window to tell them to move the cars because it was hard to make the turn. And then I realized, man, I always see the same lady running that cash register, and I can't see in the windows. So I walked up, stuck my flashlight in there, smoke stained with moisture on the inside. Like, put your stuff back on, and we're not calling anyone until we figure out what's going on in here because it's going to sound like Chief Dave's going to yell at me. So we forced open that door, and we had a fire in the kitchen in there that basically almost burned itself out. But it was hot enough in there, just like this church was, that it melted all the dry goods on the shelves, soda bottles popped, all that. But I missed that when I did my walk around because I was focused on the address side. And then there's one more that was an apartment fire in one's area. So that was on Thayer Avenue. We were coming back from another run. It was in the middle of the night, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and it went out as like, I think it said computer battery on fire in the bedroom, computer charger on fire in the bedroom. Met the guy out front, a little bit of a language barrier. And as I'm looking at the building, right, you couldn't see any of that smoke then. Everything was closed up. So it's a garden apartment with an enclosed staircase. Couldn't see anything. But if you look close enough, the windows to the left-hand side of that door and even the windows where the door is to the lobby are all black. And if you look at the unit to the right where that ground ladder is, you can clearly see those windows aren't nearly as black as the other ones. And when I told the guy, I was like, well, show me where it's at. And he's like, no. And I said, no, sir. And he's like, no, bad. So I opened the front door, and that's what we found.
Like, oh yeah, it's bad.
But I missed it, right? I missed
Yeah.
because it was nighttime, there were no lights on. So now, and it's happened to me again. It's happened to me since I've been to 15. We went for a fire alarm in the area, found a townhouse on fire, and we found it by, the lieutenant was driving a wagon at the time when he was a fireman. We found it by looking through windows, and we had smoke-stained windows that led to the first floor of a townhouse. So just something to think about when you're doing your scene size-ups, right? It's not traditional. It's not something that we teach, I don't think, in OCS school, but it is a tool to use if you have time. I wouldn't say don't deviate a whole lot from your normal practices, but if you have a chance to shine your light in a window maybe, if it doesn't look right, it's gotten me twice, so I've tried to make it a point to not get me again.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, I don't think I would have done it. Right? I don't think I've been burned by that particular scenario before, but that's a classic case of recognition, prime decision maker. Right? Something's happened to you a couple of times, and instead of getting tunnel vision on, I'm just going to go in this place is on fire and try to find the fire and do my search or whatever. Like, yeah, definitely a good point.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and I for those that read the after action, you know, one of the things, and this is probably more of an opinion of mine, is these large structures are not common fires for us, right? And so I don't think that our pace and approach should be the same for all intents and purposes as it is a room and content fire in a, you know, typical size house or townhouse or whatever.
Well, it can't be.
And
right?
if that means, say, slow down a minute and try to clue yourself in on some of these things, you know, you hear it all the time, right? I'm foregoing the 360 because the building's too large. I mean, maybe you do actually do a 360 when you're unsure and you know you have something going on. I'm saying when you know you have something going on, there is a fire in this building somewhere. I want to try to find out where it is before I commit people to it. You know, maybe you do a 360, or maybe you do pay a little bit more attention to some of the clues, like you know what Capt. Kitner is talking about. So yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, definitely. All good stuff. So I think, I mean, anybody else have anything on this particular incident that they want to highlight that either went according to plan, not according to plan, you would adjust if you had to do it again?
The only thing I'll say to this is it was intriguing to me to see this after the fact, right? And to see the amount of heat damage that was in the building. So we went back on Sunday. This happened on a Thursday. We went back Sunday. You know, I like doing detailed after action, so I wanted to get some better pictures and stuff like that. Lieutenant Palmer met me up there, and we actually made some measurements. It's kind of got a little nerdy with this stuff. But that wall blistered in the lobby, that was 45 feet away from the sanctuary doors that were closed, right? The stage in the front of that sanctuary is 90 feet away from the origin of the fire, and every cushion on the chairs melted off. All the overhead lighting inside of that sanctuary, that's 50 feet in the ceiling, all the chains melted off, all those lights dropped down. There isn't a cushion on any pew in that place. So it engages thought of what happens if you walk in this place at the ideal time. Clearly this thing probably burned most of itself out, and it's looking for some oxygen. You can see it on the big stained glass window on the outside where it was sucking smoke back in. You know, you start opening up all these doors and stuff. Do you create a situation where, you know, this place lights off? You know, so these are all things that you start thinking about after the fact. I personally have never seen heat conditions in such a large structure where there really wasn't a lot of fire at the end.
Well, none of those windows failed either.
Right.
Right, like what happens if one of those windows, just huge windows, you just saw it, like drops out. You know what I mean? Like,
You know,
Well,
what
thank God they
Lieutenant
were-
Palmer said, you know, every light fixture in that lobby
Yeah.
is melted out of the ceiling. You know, so that place was, in my opinion, it had some significant heat at some point.
If they weren't double pane with Lexan, they would have. Yeah. It would have been a lot easier to see for Chad when he pulled up.
I honestly, that thing would have been going
Yeah.
stem to stern. But, all right, cool. Anybody else have anything on the actual fire for a couple of these other sidebars?
I just want to say, I think with what Company 4 and the tower was faced with, I thought they did a good job. I mean, you're talking the middle of the night, they'd already run a bunch of runs, and you pull up there for a fire alarm after you just run 2 bogus fire alarms from an electrical storm in the same area. You go from that to this. It was really weird, like, when we opened those sanctuary doors. I've never seen anything to that extent. Like the chief said, like, you had chandeliers that fell perfectly from the ceiling and landed in the middle of the aisleways, and I was like, man, this is, like, very eerie.
As an officer, how do you communicate that? Like, I don't know. I think I'd struggle, right? Especially with a crew that, like, I know you've been parked there for a while, but like, a million things are going through your head. You might have a game plan then that you formulate, obviously, pretty quickly. Or if you didn't, I mean, everybody thinks they have a game plan, but until you get there and you see what you're faced with, you pull up on this and realize it's on fire, you don't have a game plan, really, right? You're creating it right there. So how do you communicate that game plan to the people you got? Like, I know I struggle with that sometimes. Like, oh, yeah, I got a game plan. I'm doing X, Y, Z, and I think these guys are going to come right behind me and do X, Y, Z too. But unless you spell that out, like, how did you do that? How did that go? That whole communication of like, hey, this is what we're dealing with here. This is what I think we're dealing with. This is what we're going to do about it.
The most challenging thing for me personally on this was the mind, like thinking what's going on. It wasn't physical or anything like that. I didn't have to cut a roof or anything, but it was like, how do I communicate what's going on here that's so odd in a short period of time to him so he knows what's going on? You know what I mean? How do I do that
paint that
without
picture,
talking on the radio for 5 minutes or saying something wrong or anything like that? I mean, there was a lot of times going back and forth with the second due engine, like, what are you thinking? What do you think? Like, hey, like kind of like brainstorming almost inside, because it's like we're getting to the point now where we've been in here a significant amount of time, or what seemed like a good time slows down.
Right.
You feel like you're in there for 30 minutes, and you're
Sure.
like, we got to find it, or he's going to get. All right, I'm not going to even. We're going to back
Yeah,
out.
we're not
of it.
entertaining this anymore. Yeah.
So, I think that was the hardest part, is that push pull. What they talk about, push pull communication. And relaying the right
I
information.
definitely. I mean, every picture I've seen, it's like how do you, like you said, how do you wrap your? You guys all said, like, how do you wrap your head around this? It's like, this is so odd.
It's very
You know,
confusing.
I mean, I've been in an individual apartment before that was burned out with no fire left, and it's like you're in there. It was like Roanoke Avenue or whatever. And you get in there, and it's like it smells like it's on fire. You open the doors, floor to ceiling smoke. There's really no heat. You're going around, same thing. You're seeing melted light fixtures and burned cushions, and it's like, what is going? Like, where is this fire? Like, what is happening here? And then you ventilate a little bit, like, oh, let's figure out what's going on. And it lifts, and it's like, oh, this place was on fire like a day ago, you know, and it just all sealed up. So magnified however many times in this big building is definitely odd.
I mean, I can tell you from the command officer perspective, I thought what was coming back was good information. All the way to the point of 24's engine officer communicating to the 5th due to complete the water supply way early, so they knew. You know, he talked about the smoke conditions. He talked about stuff being, you know, melted out of the ceiling. They talked about the change in the smoke conditions, increasing in heat. Lieutenant Moore gave a very, very detailed roof report when we got to that point. Captain Kitner gave me a verbal, you know, at the buggy information that. So, you know, in hindsight, right, we're all our own worst critics.
Of course.
But really, from being in the command post, I felt like the information that was coming in was decent. So.
I think Chief Blinkhorn had.
And what was determined to be the cause and origin?
So where Captain Kitner described the half wall up on there's like a little stage area where all the church electronics are, sound boards and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what caused it other than an electrical issue. In other words, I don't know if it was a power outage, you know, issue or just something in the church, electrical wise, but that was definitely the origin. And it just burned up that ceiling space and got into the void space of the roof where it ties into the sanctuary roof.
Anything else, Chief? Okay. So just another general topic, I guess. 2 things I picked out that I don't know, just points for discussion. Right? It's all, we're not preaching anything here, no pun intended. We're talking about church, but sending somebody to the roof. Did you send them? Who was the first one on the roof, and did you send them there, or did they go on their own?
No, I sent, it was paramedic engine 740, so the initial assignment they got was backing up 15. But, you know, when we did the evacuation, they were just stretching in. They were slightly delayed because I had them do a circle check of the structure. So it just worked out well that they already had a line right there adjacent to where truck 15 was positioned, and the truck 15's ladder went right to, you know, where this fire was venting. So I had them stretch their line up there. I had the officer give an assessment of the roof. I didn't want to commit anybody until I knew that it was safe to do so. He gave me good information that allowed us to, make a comfortable decision to let him go ahead and advance off the ladder onto the roof and get some water flowing, where the fire was venting.
So I'm getting at, as we always talk about, good situational awareness and getting a good assessment. There's 6 sides to a cube, right? What are your thoughts, and it's all opinion, right? What are your thoughts on, and you guys who have ridden trucks and regularly ride trucks and other chiefs, it's no secret we staff our trucks with 3 people on a good day, right? So the truck driver's a busy person, got a lot of stuff to do. What are your thoughts on somebody getting to the roof early, particularly on a multifamily or a commercial building, and giving a good roof report and a size up, potentially a side Charlie size up if it's inaccessible other ways? Like, what are your thoughts on that? I'm not advocating for anybody operating alone or anything. Again, disclaimers, right? And we're having an honest conversation. What's your opinion on that?
I think it's safe. If it's safe to do so, I'm all about it, because I think the more intel you can get to the command post about what may or may not be going on, the better off you are as far as making decisions and planning out, how you want to go about, managing this incident. That's probably a fine line. I think you got to know your people too.
We're talking about size up on a building that big, right? Conditions evident from natural openings. I've been on one particular roof I can remember of a really large building that's on fire, and conditions evident from natural openings in that roof were very indicative of how far the fire has progressed across that building in that void space, not knowing exactly where it is. So I think that in and of itself is a good tool, aside from, hey, what's the roof made out of, dead loads, all that kind of stuff that people talk about. I mean, it's very telling, especially in a large building. But again, you don't want to put people in bad spots. So I was just curious, do you guys have anything like, from truck driving days and / now riding in charge of a truck? Like, what are your opinions on that type of structure? Again, barring anything else that the truck driver takes priority over that. That assessment.
I mean, on a large building like that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we trust all of our drivers; they're good. But when we're talking like garden apartments and stuff like that, they're busy. I mean, the fact is we don't have appropriate staffing on the special services, and hopefully one day soon we'll get there. This fire would have helped to have more people. Would have helped me the other night on Flower Avenue. But I think if it's something in a large building like this that the driver's not focusing on ground ladders or fans right away, a roof report is critical. A detailed roof report like the one that Lieutenant Moore gave was spot on. And we work with a county close to us to the east where that's a requirement, and it's also a requirement in the city that a roof report is given right away. So,
and again, like I said, we know there's a lot of other factors right, that at play, and other priorities might take precedent or dictate that.
I think if it's possible, it's a good idea. It's at least something that should be considered.
Do you guys have an opinion from another chief officer perspective? I mean, one way or another, like, would you say, and there's no absolutes, right? But I mean, do you see value in that? Is getting an early unprompted roof report on these type of structures, or is that something that you would shy away from?
So if it's warranted and it paints a picture for us, any information we get that better paints a picture for us to make our decisions is helpful.
So something I think for truck drivers to think about, right? Again, not saying that that's going to be the first thing you do, but put that in your list of, in the priority order, right, accordingly, and that can certainly be valuable in a building like this. All right, get off the roof soapbox, or the whatever you want to call it. Get about 15 more minutes before we wrap up. The search rope thing. Everybody carries a search rope, right? Did you guys have, at least at Company 15, do you have a plan for how you use that? Or was it one of those like, hey, we got a rope, we know we're just, large structure, we're going to use it to help find our way out if we need to, and we're just going to, or like, how did you use it? I guess just explain.
I mean, I could sit here and I could blow smoke and tell you that we train on that every day and that we're real proficient
Nobody
with
does.
it, but that's not true.
No.
The instance in this case was, and like I said before, I didn't even bring it, right? The rescue squad driver brought it. It was a heads-up call by him, and it was vital to the operation initially when we were going in there without a hose line. So he tied it off. It was his idea. It was very good. We have since started talking about that more and marking the ropes in certain increments so we know how far we are with certain devices. I've done it before. I've trained on it. But to say that I've used it in a building like that, of that size, no, not until the other night.
You found it beneficial?
I did, yeah. I mean, we didn't know how far we were going. I mean, we had no idea how far we were going, but I knew from based on the outside of how big it looked, we needed something. So it was a good call by him. We ended up coming off the search rope, and we maintained verbal communication of where we were, the three of us.
I was going to ask how you branched off
Yeah.
of it, so, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've also practiced some other stuff, like AST is a good place that we went to when we did the one. I don't think it's the scenario on now, but the one before where we actually went in, placed somebody with a handline in the nozzle. I gave them a Halligan bar, and I had them sound that Halligan bar every 30 seconds while I'm out searching for victims, so I know how to find my way back. So it wasn't necessarily a rope, it was a hose line, but the same principle.
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else have any exposure with search ropes or opinions on that? I mean, this is just my notes because I asked those questions myself as I was, putting my uniform on. I'm just like, again, I think that's one of those things we could do better as a department.
One thing is, sometimes people for a wide area search will position somebody and have them watch the crew with a thermal imaging camera. And, based on some of what they said, that wouldn't have worked in this case because they had whiteout conditions. So I don't know if you would have seen a firefighter crawling around,
Yeah. I'm not advocating there's only one way to do it, right? I've done RIT drills where you take a tag line off the end of a hose line, a firefighter's off a hose. Yeah, I've done all different things. I'm not saying there needs to be one way to do it, but something everybody should think about and at least have some sort of plan, or it's not something you do every day, so. Cool. All right. I guess we'll go around the table real quick. We'll start with Chief Masters and just, again, if you have anything on those questions before, like, hey, what could we do better? I guess as an individual, as a chief officer, if you want to, look at it in that light, or just as a department, or just general operationally, and if you had to run this incident again, like, or a similar incident, is there anything you would take into consideration that you didn't on this one?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think the incident went well. I think, like I said numerous times, I think the communication coming back was very good. But I think that as a department, maybe just consider this is a rare type of fire, meaning in a large structure. Slow down a little bit, get as much intel as you can before you commit, and realize that the couple things that we've talked about, smoke showing from 32,000 feet is not the same as smoke showing from 1,000 square feet.
Absolutely.
Stuff like that. And just, if that causes you to slow your pace down a little bit so that you're truly getting situational awareness, I think that is, my opinion, that's the way to go.
So that's something we talk about a lot. I think taking the appropriate coordinating approach to, hey, is this a...
And I'm not saying they did anything wrong.
Yeah,
by any means.
absolutely.
I'm just talking very broadly.
Yep, 100%. I agree.
Kind of what I already talked about, communication. As an officer, you're always like in your mind or whatever, you're practicing that on-scene report and all that, but you never really practice on how to describe things you rarely ever see before on the radio in a, efficient manner.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, I've been there. Absolutely. Mike?
No, I think it went very well. I mean, what do you do with that? Like you said, you go to a one-story Rambler on the side of Briggs Cheney Road and it's blowing smoke out of either gable vents and the soffit's falling out. Like, you probably have a fire in the attic, but you have stuff melted off the walls, but the conduit's still shiny. Like, nothing made sense. I mean, it's just, from an officer's perspective, like going through that process of elimination. Like, okay, like I got good smoke, I got good heat, but it's not in here with me, and it's got to be above me. Like Chad said, like that's a good cue, right? Well, then you can't reach it, and then the people where you can reach it, nothing wrong. So it's like, where do you go from there? So it was like a constant, just like, what haven't I done? Where haven't I been? What do I need to do next? Because like it was just a very odd circumstance.
I think a lot of this stuff is, so it seems like a lot of this stuff is just awareness, right? An individual, how you process information that you're presented, right? And I think that's just being aware of how to do that. Because that one-story single-family on Briggs Cheney Road could go wrong too, right? Like, we want to do something different on that fire.
I guess my
I know
you know where to go
saying,
with that,
yeah.
right? Like I know I got to walk in there and stick a hook.
That's what I'm saying. We could
drywall.
what if it to death because you could
but
want to do
it
something
went very well.
different on that fire, too.
People worked very hard. I mean, they worked their butts off 3 o'clock in the morning. Hats off to those people. They're what makes us look good. So I mean, the credit's got to be given to them. I mean, I guess if we had to improve on anything, if we're not, I mean, I know we have some things in place like to start upstaffing truck companies and stuff like that, but if we're going to supplement special service staffing with engine companies, trying to utilize, like you said, some of those resources like AST and stuff like that to maybe do some truck-driven type drills. Like I know we recently went down there with some newer guys that are getting ready to cut loose on a truck and went over just taking carriage bolts, and that would have probably been a prime example somewhere down Flower Avenue, right? Like, you get a 3-person truck company here, I'm going to give you this engine company for manpower because you have multiple doors to force and exposures in the rear of a building on Flower Avenue. But we know that's not a relatively nice neighborhood. People probably protect their stuff very well. could you hand a saw off to someone and have them start taking carriage bolts? Do they know how to take an outward swinging door? Things of that nature. Because you can't be upset with them if they've never seen it or they've never had the opportunity to put their hands on it. So you put people, I don't say in bad situations, but sometimes in situations where we get frustrated with that. Not that this happened here, because everyone, you had Joe Sharboff coming from a truck house at 19, being parked at 25, and the guys at 40 swing between the two.
Yeah,
but,
so none of this is to say we did anything wrong, or just
how do you
be
improve?
self-critical, right? It's not
that would have been, because again, you could change that. Take a single engine firehouse with some newer people coming off probation. You can't really be frustrated with them,
right?
Because you haven't awarded them the opportunity in vast numbers to really put your hands on stuff and drill. So,
yeah. Cool. Capt?
No, I don't have anything. I mean, I have a lot of stuff that I'd like to say, but I'm not gonna. Nothing bad, right? But I think, I had some ideas. I think I could have been better with communication with the chief. I'm operating in a huge sanctuary. I don't know that I ever said that. I'm operating on a search rope. He doesn't know that. He doesn't necessarily know that I only have 3 people until he does a par check, right, at Burton. So I could have had a 4th or a 5th. So just things like that. I also, I thought about this after the fire at 8750. Maybe when we have supplemental people coming, some volunteer chiefs, an extra chief or whatever, like a recon, just something simple like a recon chief. I was on the 2nd alarm at 8750, and I've kicked myself several times when I've played that call over in my head that as I'm going up the staircase, if I would have just dipped out onto a lower floor and would have went to one of those inner courtyard apartments, I could have looked up and seen what was going on, and I could have relayed that information to give a better report. I didn't do it. I probably could have said some things better to let him understand the conditions that we were in. And I don't know, the people watching, we don't have photos of the inside, but the suspicion is that this thing burned for so long before it set the fire alarm off that it blew open the back pedestrian door that led to the Charlie side that Lieutenant Moore found open when he got there. Because it's just a single man door it had panic bar, right?
Panic bar. That's
panic bar, that it blew it open. And it blew open all 4 sanctuary doors before Company 4 got there, melted everything in the lobby, and the automatic closers closed the sanctuary doors back up. We were the ones that opened the sanctuary doors to go in. Company 4, the door they went in, and the one we went in. And we know they were closed because the automatic closers are still there and they're melted. And that caused all of that material and the chandeliers and everything. So something catastrophic happened in there, and just thank God it wasn't when Lieutenant Palmer opened the door.
Yeah. Yeah, I think personally, right, I feel like I take what I know for granted when you're in that environment, right? I maybe don't say enough sometimes, that fine line. We don't want to be clogging up the radio and unnecessary radio transmissions and stuff. But in terms of communicating, I think, at least for me, I always feel like I take for granted that other people might know or see what I see, and that might not be the case. So, cool. All right. Anybody have any last parting words? I think we talked around it pretty good. Anything else in the chat or anything? Nope. Cool. All right, we'll wrap up. Again, thanks everybody for joining us. A good hybrid episode. We got a good back and forth in the chief officer perspective and the company officer perspective. Next Wednesday is the From the Command Post. So we'll hit another From the Command Post next Wednesday, and then a couple more episodes in the works now that we're back in the fall and in the swing of things. So thanks again, guys, for joining us, and for you guys watching. Have a good one. We're out.